He didn't move. Not once. The entire night. I've tried to explain it to people. I've tried to find the rational version of what happened. But there are some things that don't have a rational version. Some things just stay with you exactly the way they were. Cold, quiet, unresolved. I've worked night shift for years. Different jobs, different cities. And across all of it, 3 nights follow me everywhere I go. This is what happened. I was 23 when I took the overnight stocking job at a grocery store. One of those big chain locations that never actually closes. The kind of place that exists in a completely different world after 10 at night. The lights are the same. The layout is the same. But the feeling is different. Quieter. Heavier. My shift ran from 10 at night until 6 in the morning. Just me, a register guy named Roderick, and a floor manager named Dale. Dale treated the back office like his personal apartment. Half the time you'd forget he was even there. The first few weeks were uneventful. You learn the rhythm fast. Stock in a certain order. Avoid the floor waxer who came in around 2. Take your break at 3 when the building hit its emptiest point. And it was empty. That's the thing people don't realize about overnight retail. Between midnight and 5, almost nobody comes in. You get a nurse grabbing coffee before her shift, a college kid who waited too long to buy snacks, 1 or 2 people who moved fast and left without looking at anything they didn't already need. Most overnight customers knew exactly what they came in for. He looked like he didn't come in for anything at all. It was a Thursday in late October. I was pushing a cart of paper towels down aisle 4, household goods, cleaning products, when I came around the end cap and almost walked straight into him. He was maybe 60 years old. Heavy wool coat even though it wasn't that cold yet. Dark slacks, dress shoes, the kind of outfit you wore to a dinner or a funeral. He was standing in the middle of the aisle with his back to me, facing the cleaning products shelf. I said, "Excuse me," pulled my cart around him, kept moving. 15 minutes later, I came back through with another load. He hadn't moved. Same spot, same posture, not even a shift in weight. I told myself he was reading labels. Some people do that, stand in an aisle reading every ingredient on every bottle like they're going to need to recite it from memory later. Odd, but not unheard of. I let it go. Then it was 12:30, then 1, and every single time I passed aisle 4, there he was. At first I thought I was just noticing him more than I should have been, but then I stopped, and I really looked at him. His hands were at his sides, not in his pockets, not holding anything. His head was completely level, gaze fixed straight ahead. He wasn't scanning the shelf. He wasn't reaching for anything. He was just standing there, perfectly still, the way a person stands when they're not thinking about standing at all. I went to Roderick at the register. I said, "There's a guy in aisle 4 who's been standing in the same spot for over an hour." Roderick leaned out, looked down the aisle, and shrugged. "He was there when I clocked in," he said. "Some people are just like that. Don't worry about it." I went back to work, but I kept checking. Every time I passed that aisle, I'd glance down it, and every time, he was there. Not moved, not turned around, not doing anything different at all. At around 1:30, I walked the aisle directly, close enough to see his face this time. His eyes were open and fixed on a row of dish soap at chest height. His lips were slightly parted. He was breathing. I could see his chest move, but his expression was completely blank. He looked like a person standing at the edge of something, waiting for permission to fall. I said, "Hey, you all right? Can I help you find something?" He turned, not quickly, not startled. He turned the way you turn when you've been somewhere very far away and someone pulls you back. His eyes were pale, light gray, maybe blue. Hard to tell under the fluorescent lighting. He looked at me for a long moment without saying anything. Then he said, "I'm waiting." I said, "Waiting for what?" He turned back to the shelf. That was it. No explanation. He just turned back. I stood there for a second. Then I walked away fast. I went to Dale. I told him there was a man who had been standing motionless in the same spot for nearly 3 hours and that something felt off. Dale came out, looked down the aisle from a distance, and told me the man wasn't causing a disturbance, told me to focus on my section. So I did. I went to the back at 3 for my break, sat down with a sandwich I couldn't really taste, turning those 2 words over and over. I'm waiting. For what? For who? What brings a person to the cleaning products aisle at 1 in the morning and keeps them standing there for hours, motionless, staring at dish soap like it's about to say something back? I couldn't come up with a single answer that made sense. When I came back out, I walked straight to aisle 4. He was gone. I checked every aisle, the bathrooms, the entrance lobby. Nothing. Roderick said the front door sensor never chimed, and it was loud. You could hear it from anywhere in the store. He'd been watching the door all night and never heard it trigger once. The back exit was still alarmed, hadn't been opened. There was no way out that either of us could account for. I stood in the aisle trying to process that, and then I noticed the shelf. The section directly in front of where he'd been standing, the exact row of dish soap his eyes had been fixed on for 2.5 hours, was completely bare. Every bottle was gone. My first thought was a stocking error. Someone had pulled the wrong items. But I hadn't been in that aisle. Roderick hadn't left the register. Dale hadn't moved from the back office. Then I turned around. The bottles were behind me. Every single one, arranged in a single row on the floor. Perfectly spaced. All facing outward. Set down with care, like someone had taken their time and wanted them to be exactly right. I hadn't heard a sound. Not one. I stood there staring at those bottles for a long time, and I kept thinking about the same thing. How long it would have taken to do that. How carefully you'd have to move. How close you'd have to get. And how I hadn't heard a single thing. I told myself there was an explanation. That I'd missed something obvious, that the night had made everything feel stranger than it was. I told myself that for a long time. But it wasn't the last time I'd see someone who didn't move. A few years later, I took an overnight security position at a downtown office building. 22 floors. Glass and steel exterior, marble lobby that looked sharp during business hours. At night, it was just a large, empty structure I was responsible for keeping quiet. The job was simple: sit at the front desk, monitor the camera feeds, walk each floor every 2 hours, sign the log. That was it. Most nights were completely uneventful. You got comfortable with silence fast. You learned what the building sounded like when nothing was wrong. The low hum of the HVAC, the soft click of the elevator cables, the faint buzz of the lobby lights after midnight. The lobby had floor-to-ceiling windows facing the street. At night, you could see everything outside clearly. The sidewalk, the parking structure across the road, the orange cones of the streetlights stretching in both directions. Usually there was nothing out there. A cab passing, the occasional couple walking home from somewhere still open a few blocks over. That changed in February. The cold that year was brutal. Negative temperatures for nearly 2 weeks straight. The kind of cold that shuts a city down. Streets that were normally active at 2 in the morning were completely empty. So the first night, I looked up and saw a man standing on the sidewalk across the street. I noticed immediately. He was positioned in front of the parking structure entrance. Heavy coat, hands at his sides, facing the building, not moving at all. I assumed he was waiting for a pickup. Someone was running late. Easy explanation. I went back to the camera feeds, did my 2 a.m. walkthrough, came back at 4. He was still there. I logged it and mentioned it to the day guard when I handed off at 6. He laughed, said downtown always had people like that. Second night, same spot, same posture, standing in negative 12-degree wind chill for hours without moving an inch. That's when I started paying closer attention. The lobby windows were reflective at night. From outside, you could see into the lobby generally, the lights, the layout, but the security desk was set back from the glass, partially blocked by a support column. To see someone sitting there, you'd have to know exactly where to look. But every single time I looked up, he was facing me. Not the building in general, not the windows. The exact point in the lobby where the desk sat, like he knew precisely where I was. I called the non-emergency police line on night 3, explained the situation. Man standing in sub-zero temperatures for multiple hours, multiple nights, same exact spot. The dispatcher said it wasn't a criminal matter, but she'd send someone out for a wellness check. The patrol car arrived about 40 minutes later. The officer crossed the street and approached him. I watched from the lobby. There was a brief exchange, maybe 30 seconds. Then the officer walked back to the car, got in, and drove away. The man didn't move. Not even when the patrol car headlights swept directly across him as it pulled out. He didn't flinch, didn't turn his head, didn't react at all. I called back. The dispatcher told me the officer made contact. The individual was fine and had every right to stand on a public sidewalk. I asked what the man had said to the officer. She said she didn't have that information. After that, I started logging every sighting with timestamps, arrival time, departure time, any changes in behavior. I wasn't sure why I was doing it exactly. It just felt important to have it written down somewhere. He showed up between midnight and 1. He was always gone before 6, 4 out of every 5 nights without fail. Consistent enough that I started expecting him. And the one night he didn't appear, I couldn't settle at all. I kept looking at the window. The empty sidewalk felt wrong. Like something had been removed from a room and you couldn't figure out what it was, but you knew something was missing. The absence was almost worse than the presence. About 6 weeks in, something changed. I was doing my 2 a.m. walkthrough on the 3rd floor. Financial firm, dark offices, the standby lights on the equipment blinking slowly in the quiet. I was moving down the hallway toward the copy room when I stopped. There was a window at the far end of the corridor looking out over the street below. I could see him, but he wasn't facing the lobby windows anymore. He was looking up, directly at the window I was standing at. 3rd floor. That specific window. No lights were on in the office. I was using my flashlight pointed down at the floor. From street level, in the dark, at that distance and angle, there was no reasonable way to see me standing there. But he was looking right at me. Not at the floor, not at the general area. At me. I didn't move. He didn't move. We stayed like that for maybe 30 seconds. It felt much longer. Then he raised one hand, slowly, deliberately. Not a wave. Not anything you'd do for someone you recognized. It was more like an acknowledgement. The kind of gesture that means, I see you, I know you're there. I walked back to the elevator. I didn't run, but I moved faster than normal. Rode down to the lobby, sat at the desk, and did not look out the front windows for the rest of the night. When my replacement came in at 6, I asked him casually if he'd ever noticed anyone standing across the street at night. He looked at me for a moment. Then he said, "You mean the one in the gray coat?" I said yes. He said, "I figured he was something to do with you. He's only there on your nights." I didn't respond. I just stood there. When I got home, I opened the shift schedule on my phone and went back through every sighting I'd logged. Every single night that man had appeared, every timestamp, every entry. I had been the only person on shift. Not one overlap. Not one exception. I quit 2 weeks later. Told people it was the hours, the pay, the commute. All of that was partially true. But the real reason was simpler than any of that. I had stopped feeling alone in that building. And no matter how long I sat there, I couldn't make myself feel alone in it again. I'd like to tell you that was the end of it, that I moved on and put all of this behind me. But the last story is different from the other two. The last one I still don't have a single explanation for, and I've had 2 years to look. The timestamps in this story are the only reason I know I'm not remembering it wrong. I worked the overnight front desk at a mid-range hotel about 2 years ago, the kind of place that's always half occupied, always slightly worn at the edges. Hallways that smell like carpet cleaner and recycled air that's been through the system too many times. My shift was 11 at night to 7 in the morning. It was a slow Tuesday in early November when it started. Check-ins were done by midnight. The lobby was quiet. Just the sound of the heater cycling on and off and the faint flicker of one of the overhead lights that maintenance had been meaning to replace for weeks. I was at the desk, half watching the monitor behind me cycle through the camera feeds. Lobby entrance, elevator banks, second floor hallway, the small alcove near the vending machines. That's when I saw him for the first time. He was in the alcove, just a small seating area off the main hallway. 2 chairs, a side table, a fake plant nobody had watered since it was installed. Guests used it occasionally when they didn't want to be in their rooms. I'd seen people there before at odd hours. It wasn't unusual on its own. But I had never seen anyone sit there the way this man was sitting. Both hands flat on his thighs, back straight, eyes fixed on the wall directly in front of him. Not on his phone, not on anything, just the wall. I watched the feed for a few minutes, waiting for him to shift or reach for something. He didn't. 45 minutes. I checked the clock twice because I didn't believe it the first time. 45 minutes without a single adjustment. No crossed legs, no leaning forward, no glancing around, just sitting, perfectly still, staring at the wall. I pulled the camera up full screen and watched. His chest moved. He was breathing. But other than that, there was nothing to see. And somehow that made it worse. I called the second floor hallway phone, let it ring 6 times. Nobody answered, but that phone was in the corridor, not in the alcove itself. I hadn't expected him to get it. I almost went up, but the lobby policy was clear. Desk couldn't be left unstaffed, and technically he wasn't doing anything that required me to go up there, so I kept watching. At 1:15 a.m. he stood up, slowly, the way someone stands after sitting in one position for a long time. He straightened his jacket, turned away from the wall, and walked down the hallway toward the elevator. I watched him step inside. The doors closed. The elevator descended to the lobby. The doors opened. Nobody came out. I rewound the camera immediately, watched it again. Elevator doors open. Nobody inside. Nobody crossing through the lobby. The stairwell door never moved. I went through every feed I had. Second floor, hallway, lobby, rear exit. Nothing. No one walking out of frame. No motion anywhere in the building. He was just gone. I sat with that for a few minutes. Went through the rational explanations one by one. Camera angle issue. He stepped to the side the instant the doors opened. Some kind of recording glitch. I went through all of it, and none of it held up against what I'd just watched with my own eyes. Then I checked the guest log. Based on his position and the direction he'd come from, he would have come out of room 214. Room 214 was registered to a Gary Follett. Checked in at 4:17 p.m. Cash payment, single occupant, no vehicle on file, no loyalty number. I flagged the room in the system and left a note to monitor it. The second night I requested the same shift. I needed to know if it happened again. It did. Same chair, same time, same position. Hands flat on his thighs, eyes on the wall, not moving. I went up this time. I took the stairs to the second floor and walked the hallway slowly, keeping close to the wall. The alcove was around a corner near the elevator bank. As I got close, I could see the edge of the chair. I could see his hands resting on his thighs. I came around the corner. He was already looking at me. Not at the wall, not at the hallway generally. At me, directly, like he'd tracked me from the moment I stepped off the stairwell. His expression didn't change at all. No surprise, no reaction. He looked like someone who had expected this exact moment and felt nothing about it one way or the other. I said, "Hey, just doing rounds. Everything okay up here?" He said, "I heard you on the stairs." I said, "Those stairs are pretty quiet." He said, "I heard you." I gave him the standard line. Common areas are available anytime. Front desk is always staffed if he needed anything. He nodded once. I went back to the elevator, rode down to the lobby, sat at the desk. At 3 a.m. he was back in the chair, At 3:40, he stood up and disappeared again the same way. I ran to the stairwell this time, took the stairs back up as fast as I could, came out on the second floor, checked the hallway, the alcove, every visible corner. Nobody. Elevator empty. Stairwell empty. No sound anywhere on that floor. Gone. Again. With nowhere to go. I called the manager before my third shift, explained the full pattern, the alcove, the timing, the disappearances from the elevator. She told me guests were allowed in common areas and that Gary Follett had extended his stay to a full week. I asked if anyone had seen him at check-in in person. She said front desk processed him. I asked if there was a keycard photo in the system. Long pause. She said the system didn't have one. I wrote that down. I wrote everything down from that point forward. That night, around 2 a.m, a woman came down to the lobby. Mid-50s, pajamas, hair undone, moving the way people move when something has frightened them badly enough that getting dressed didn't occur to them. No jacket, no shoes, just moving. She was in room 212. She said the man in the room next to her, 214, had been standing in his doorway for over an hour. Door open, light off. Just standing in the dark opening, facing the hallway, not moving. She had come out to get ice, turned around, and he was right there in the doorframe. She said hello. He didn't respond, didn't look at her, didn't move. She went back inside, locked the door, and called down. I radioed Frank immediately. Frank was our overnight security, retired cop, worked the parking lot. He came in through the side entrance and we went up together. Room 214's door was closed. Frank knocked twice. Nothing. Knocked again. Harder. Silence. We used the master key. The room was completely untouched. Bed made exactly the way housekeeping left it, the fold on the top sheet still crisp. Bathroom dry. No water had been run. The towels still folded on the rack with the paper band around them. The toilet seat strip still sealed in its original crease. Nothing in the closet. Nothing in the trash. No luggage. No toiletries. No personal items of any kind. The room looked like a room that had never been walked into. Gary Follett had been checked in for 4 days. Frank looked at me and said, "Does this person actually exist?" We went back downstairs and pulled every hour of camera footage from that day. Lobby entry, elevator banks, second floor corridor, check-in time through the current hour. We went through all of it frame by frame. Gary Follett did not appear on a single frame, not entering the building, not at the elevator, not in the hallway, not anywhere. But at 2:09 a.m. on the second floor hallway camera, the door to room 214 opened. Nobody walked out. The door stayed open for 48 seconds. Then it swung slowly shut on its own. 48 seconds. I've thought about that number more than I'd like to admit. The manager handled it the next morning. She called the number on the reservation. Disconnected. She contacted the booking platform. The account was created the same afternoon as check-in. Randomized email address, never used before or since. She had the cash verified. It was completely legitimate. Nothing wrong with a single bill. She canceled the reservation, had the room cleaned and removed it from inventory for the rest of the week. That night, night 5, I came in at 11 and sat at the desk. I didn't look at the monitor right away. I made coffee, checked the log, did the usual things. At 2 a.m., according to the system clock, I finally looked up at the monitor. He was in the alcove. Same chair, same position, hands flat on his thighs, facing the wall. No reservation, no active guest in room 214. No record of anyone entering the building that night. I stared at that camera for a long time. On every previous night, if I watched him long enough, he'd eventually turn. He'd look back at the camera like he could feel he was being watched. This time he didn't move at all. He just sat there, perfectly still, facing the wall. And I sat at the desk watching him. And the longer it went on, the worse the feeling got. Not because of what he was doing, because of what I couldn't stop thinking about. The camera timestamp read 2 a.m. flat, but I hadn't looked at the monitor until 2:17. He had been sitting there for at least 17 minutes before I looked. 17 minutes in a room with no reservation, in a building with no record of him entering, in a chair he had no reason to be in, waiting. I don't know what Gary Follett was. I don't know how he occupied a room he never walked into. I don't know where he went when the elevator doors opened and nobody stepped out. What I know is this: he was there before I looked. And every time I think about that, the empty room, the door opening with nobody behind it, those 17 minutes, I keep coming back to one question: what was he waiting for? And whether at some point that night, he found it. I don't have clean endings for any of these. I've looked for them. I've gone back over the details more times than I can count, and every time I end up in the same place. A question with no answer, a detail that doesn't fit, a feeling that never fully goes away. If you work nights, or if you've ever seen something you still can't explain, leave it in the comments. I read all of them. And if you want more real night shift stories like this, subscribe. New videos go up regularly. Stay safe out there. Keep the lights on. And if someone near you isn't moving, don't ask what they're waiting for.